从而也未见得必败。
What's happening, guys? James Blonde here with MMOHuts.com. This time with a first look at Swordsman Online, a free-to-play martial arts MMORPG based on a Chinese novel written by Louis Cha, a famous wuxia novelist. Now, Swordsman Online is developed and published by Perfect World Entertainment using the new Angelica 3 engine, which is supposed to deliver smooth animations and a couple of other cool perks with very fast performance. And the game just transitioned to open beta and can be downloaded through Perfect World's new Arc client, so I'll hop in and show you guys just what the game has to offer. Okay, so first off, I'll show you guys the customization options, and as you can see here, you can choose male or female, but you might look ahead at the schools you want to join, because there are 2 out of the 10 schools that are specifically male or female. So in the customization, you only choose your gender, you don't actually choose your class. Instead, you follow one of the schools, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. So I actually like how the customization is set up in basic and advanced settings. That's always good to me. I always like when an MMORPG has that, because you have the choice to set the basic settings to get you right into the gameplay, and they pretty much look fine. Or you can, for example, change your height, width, limb size, head size, and of course, chest size, and with the females, you get the boob slider. But as far as the basic settings goes, you've got, you get to choose your portrait, which is used for dialogue and social aspects of the game. This one kind of looks like a young Hannibal Lecter, a little bit creepy there. And you also notice that when you rotate your character, you get an idea of the detail behind the movement of the clothes and hair, which is something that makes the fighting in any MMORPG look a lot better. So you can see that they push detail into that. Now with the hair, you've got some cool options, even though a lot of them are really similar, and the same thing goes with the females, although I kind of like their hairstyles a little bit better. And of course, you've got some options for the hair color as well. And once again, for the basic options, you've got preset facial options here, which have a decent variety to them. Otherwise, you can go with the advanced settings and sort of swing most of these over to the side here, and then you start to make a Jay Leno kind of David and Hasselhoff looking humanoid. Now what's strange to me is the main feature you notice in your character right off the bat is the eyes, and I think that they did a pretty good job with them, but the thing is you can't actually change the eye color, which I thought was kind of weird. Nor does it look like the brow color does anything yet. I guess that's something that they'll add later on. You've got basic or advanced options with the nose and mouth, and then you've got the details, which give you forehead wrinkles, eye wrinkles, different textures around the nose. You've got a couple of scars, and then finally you've got the epic facial hair. It wouldn't be a martial arts MMO without the Fu Manchu. And of course you've got substitutes for the females, but obviously not facial hair, and you've got a lot less options. But either way, there's a lot of variety when it comes to customization. I would say almost along the lines of Perfect World International. Hopefully that's the mark they were trying to hit with this. And after making your character, you get put into an instance, which is somewhat of a common theme in this game, but it definitely helps push the storyline along without having to do so much in the quest dialogue. So that's nice. Now the first thing you have to do is to select your combat style, or your control style in other words. This is something that we have to do a lot recently, just like we had to do in Black Gold Online. But honestly, out of the 3 you choose, none of them really felt like a normal MMO in terms of controls. Maybe that's just part of the martial arts MMO aspect because they're a little bit more unique. But the best by far was Action Control Scheme, as you can probably guess. It's set up a lot like Neverwinter's controls, with the reticule out in front of you. And it definitely helps with the type of skills that you encounter in this game. So before you pick your school around level 5, you just have 2 basic attacks. You've got a punch that doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and then you've got a Spartan kick that will send enemies flying across the map. It's actually pretty satisfying. So yeah, I've got to admit, the Angelica 3 engine does do a nice job with ragdoll physics, and I think that definitely makes the combat a lot more exciting. Or at least it makes your skills feel like they're dealing the damage that they're supposed to. I can say that. There isn't much in terms of a standardized tutorial, but there are plenty of hints and tips on how to go about doing things, and a lot of the various systems like refining and crafting, which happens way later on, are explained in the quest dialogue. Otherwise, everything is pretty self-explanatory. Now here's a big part of the game. Like many Asian MMOs, you'll quickly notice that the game has an auto walk to quest feature, and although you don't exactly have to use it, sometimes it's not super intuitive on what a quest is having you do or where you need to be going. And it seems like the questing is more based around you using that feature than you not using it, if you know what I mean. So over time, it starts to feel like the game is starting to play itself for you because it's convenient to click on the NPC just to go to the next location. But don't get me wrong, this is something that you can choose to do. It just seems like something you get used to doing unintentionally. In fact, after you get your mount around level 15 or so, you'll notice that it auto-mounts you on your horse once you've clicked the name in the quest tracker. So it's definitely something that they expect you to use, almost like the game is built around it, like I said. But then again, it seems to be a common trend in Asian MMOs lately. So at level 5 you get to choose your school, like I mentioned earlier, which takes the place of the game's class system, so you don't exactly have the typical archetypes that you might find in standard MMOs. Of course, instead you have the 10 different school options available to you, or 9 rather, because like I mentioned earlier, you have 2 that are gender specific. Choosing a school, though, is based around what weapons that you might want to use and what elements give you boosts. So each school has a couple of different elements that it uses. Plus the overall attack style comes into play, and obviously what looks good to you. And at the same time, you've got to look a little closer because each of the schools has 3 different fighting styles within that you gain access to as you reach certain levels, and each one of those fighting styles has 4 to 6 different skills, so you've got quite a bit of variety here. When we take a look at the schools, the Infinity School is one of the 5 great schools. They fight with good defense and overall survivability. They use twin rapiers, but they sort of lack when it comes to damage. Now, Splendor, on the other hand, is the school that I ended up choosing. Definitely has the damage, which in turn sacrifices the defense and HP, but they do, however, have some sick dashing skills and swift attack skills that end up really fun to use, especially once you get to your second set of skills, which you start to tap into around level 20. They use a longsword, but most of their moves look like it's used like a rapier. It's kind of cool, though. Next up, you've got the Harmony School, which is very similar to Splendor in terms of damage dealt and low defense. They use poison to deal damage as a bonus, whereas Splendor uses ice and earth to deal their bonus damage. Plus, the Harmony School uses even more dash and illusion-based attacks. They're actually one of the cooler looking skill casters, in my opinion, when it comes to melee attacks anyway. But then again, the game also has some really cool looking skills in general. Here you have the Taoist support disciples from Mount Imei. They focus on both attack and defense, bringing in the support for allies. So this is your good support class. Definitely good in group PvP late game. The Shaolin is the male-only school with fairly balanced attributes, using a cudgel as their weapon of choice. And they're fairly balanced between damage and defense with good single target control rather than the group control. The Wu-Tang, yeah, I laughed too when I saw this, they make the ideal tank. They've got the high HP, defensive skills, and AoE skills, and they'd work well in group PvP more so than the Shaolin. And then we start to get into the more ranged fighters with the Zephyr School. They clearly work with ice, as you can see here. Well, in this particular fighting style anyway. But they also have fire-based AoE skills. The Five Venoms is the female-only school, which is rather unique. They use whips as their primary weapon, which isn't exactly powerful, but it's ranged, plus they are the only school that gets boosts from earth, fire, ice, and poison. They're probably a little trickier to play as due to both low health and low damage. The Sun and Moon School has the overall lowest stats, unfortunately. They use both melee and ranged attacks, though, wielding daggers, making them almost the assassin type, which is good for PvP, both 1v1 and group. Really cool looking skills, too. And finally, we have the House Tong, which is fairly unique as well. They use guns, which honestly is a cool thing in martial arts settings. And their skills are set up for the most part to target a specific location, dealing a small amount of AoE damage. Now, I'd say that 10 classes is perhaps too many. Maybe you could have combined a few, seeing that some schools do have a skill or two that they share with another, or perhaps that's how many schools were written about in the novel. Either way, the game doesn't lack in terms of playstyle variety, making it appealing to want to create multiple characters to try all of the different schools. As far as the combat and the abilities themselves go, the combat is action-based, so once you start attacking, you aren't physically locked onto your target and do have to aim your abilities accordingly. Some of the abilities have telegraphs, but most do not. You just have to get used to where this skill lands. Later on, you'll get more abilities for your second fighting style, like I said, around level 20. And those seem to be considerably more advanced right off the bat, dealing a lot more damage and having more unique ways of actually executing the abilities. For example, my 1 and 3 here are skills that you can tap repetitively with immediate cooldown, or with the 1, for example, you've got to tap the ability as fast as possible in order to benefit from its full potential. Some abilities, like I said, have telegraphs. However, if you rapidly tap the key for this skill that usually has a telegraph, you can use it quicker and it will aim automatically in the direction that you're pointing. So I suppose this helps with the combo system in the game, cutting down the execution time. Now, the cool thing is that you can actually set up your own combos, and later on, at level 30, you can customize your skills, mixing the fighting styles, as well as setting specific time frames and tweaking your individual skills slightly. I'm not sure exactly how this works, but I finally got to it later on in the game. This sort of feature allows the game to remain simple for anybody to play, but still offers some of the more detailed aspects of martial arts MMOs, like Age of Wushu, for example. But I can say overall the skills look nice, and because of the ragdoll physics, they feel like they have a good impact as well. And like I started to mention earlier, the controls are a little bit different. The Angelica 3 engine makes it feel a little bit weird, but in general you've got your skills 1 through 5 or 6 sometimes, right and left click or Q for your basic attacks, or your first 2 attacks anyway. You can block with X, which is a bit interesting, but you can also macro that out, of course. It's actually a really good key for the mouse thumb button. Pressing shift helps you aim more for the range characters, but it also helps point you at your enemy to make sure certain skills make good contact. Now you'll have to go in and out of cursor mode a lot in this game, so you do so by pressing control to toggle in and out. You can still move your character with WASD and rotate the camera while you're in this mode, but you'll need the cursor in order to click through the dialogue and quest tracker. As you level, you also gain more utility skills like dashes and a sprint that all use a stamina bar. These are good to use to avoid enemy attacks, of course, or to use while attacking, or to move around while doing some of the acrobatics. First you learn the jump, then the double jump, and then of course the triple jump. By the time you're level 30 something, then you get a glide. So the acrobatics are a lot like Aura Kingdom or Yulgang 2, minus the fact that for the most part, these don't have attacks or skills that can be used with them, at least until later on anyway. But I can say that they are nice to mess around with, especially since the game lacks the invisible wall, so you don't have a problem running on the rooftops, for example. The sprint, however, is another one you might want to macro out though. By default, it's bound to V, which is kind of in an awkward spot. And later on, you can even sprint on water. Typical Wuxia feature, but it's always awesome. But I can say, unlike some other recent MMORPGs, this game actually does have some interesting cutscenes that help progress the story. They aren't English dubbed, but they do have really fast English subtitles, so you're good if you watch a lot of anime. The questing overall, though, was a bit repetitive, having you travel from one NPC to the next pretty often. Kill this or that, of course, but every once in a while you get put into an instance and have to fight a mini-boss. However, they never really did feel that challenging. This makes me feel that the game is positioned a little bit more on the PvP side, which seems to be cool based on the weight of the schools, seeing that the skills don't change for PvP. So I did try out the PvP a little bit, which was fun with the combat system in the game, but you don't have access to it until you're level 30, and nearly everyone else I fought was 15 levels higher than me, so that wasn't fun. The PvP seems fun, but you can tell that it makes a big difference on what school you're from, so if you plan to PvP, definitely want to pick a school that works well with it. So overall, I think the game is fun. It's a nice casual alternative for Age of Wushu, and I think Perfect World is definitely pushing the game in the right direction. And the crazy thing is, there wasn't an urge to purchase anything with real currency in the game. In fact, for now, I don't think you can actually spend real money in the game other than buying a hero pack. I guess that's just something that beta has to offer. Later on, you'll probably be able to buy more inventory space, which wasn't really a problem until around level 30, and I decided to stop selling stuff. Also, I'm sure that mounts and cosmetic items are something that you can purchase later on, at the least. The Angelica 3 engine is also impressive. I like the ragdoll physics, even though a lot of times they were buggy. And of course the skill effects were nice. Plus the game does run pretty smooth like it claims it does. Oh, and it does have a dynamic weather system with a day and night cycle as well. So that's part of the game engine. The biggest drawback to the game, in my opinion, though, is the auto-walk to almost auto-play the game for you system. And although you don't have to use it, the game almost encourages you to use it anyway. So it almost makes it seem like the ability to do acrobatics in the game is all just for show. But anyway, guys, the game is now in open beta, so try it out. And if you're looking for more information on the game, head over to the Swordsman game profile at MMOHuts.com. And until next time, guys, that's going to be it from me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.